Welcome to this very special edition of the KJ Masterclass Live, the show which ensures that you profit from your time spent here with experts, either through their industry insights, information, or simply learning from them. And today we have with us John Michael Thomas, Fractional Chief AI Officer and author of Lead AI with Confidence. And he says AI isn't human and never will be, but it's the first tool we can treat as if it was human. So that means the management skills one have already mastered are exactly what they need to lead AI transformation. So we'll learn about the why most AI strategies are backwards, how to avoid pilot purgatory, and what successful AI rollout actually looks like for leaders who want results, not hype. Welcome to the show, John.
Thank you so much, AJ, and thank you for inviting me.
You're welcome. Welcome to the show. John, welcome to India in this online form. And I'm sure not just in India, but a lot of people across the globe will benefit from what we are going to talk right now. We'll talk about AI leadership, we'll talk about transformation, and much more. But before that, let's talk a bit about your journey, your background, so that the audience knows who they are listening to.
Sure. So I am, as you said, I'm a fractional chief AI officer and I'm an AI strategy consultant. I've been in tech for a really long time. It's been over 4 decades, and I started life as a programmer before we even called ourselves software engineers. I was a programmer, and I grew under fire from a software engineer to a systems engineer to an everything engineer. So I was the guy that got sent all over the world to solve problems that nobody else could solve. And when I got there, a lot of times I found out they weren't even technical problems. So I grew my skill set, and then after solving problems at customer sites all over the world, I got pulled into the executive suite to start solving business problems. And I got into dealing with AI. My first foray into AI was actually in college. But my first business foray was back in 2008, 2009. I was working with neural networks. And when I started my business, my consultancy, my superpower is solving really difficult problems. And so I started my consultancy with that as my goal. But what I found is when I talked to leaders, when I talked to CEOs, I said, what's your biggest problem? And everybody was saying the same thing. They were saying AI. And I was like, well, I've already been successful with AI when I was working for somebody else. And now I help CEOs do that. So one of the things I found was that when you talk to leaders, they're overwhelmed by hype. And they hear all these things that AI can do magic, but they don't really know what it can do. And they start making plans and moving forward with things that actually don't work, that AI is not good at. And so my job, which I took on myself, was to say, okay, here's actually the path that works. And so that's what I did. I talked with over 100 leaders and I worked with people, and I said, okay, here's the path that actually works to get you from point A to point B, to actually get you to where AI isn't just something that you're using, but AI is actually adding value to your business.
Absolutely, John. So I want to understand from your understanding of these things, what are the questions these leaders generally have? Because if they are listening to only hype, why is it? Because they are all, intelligent people. They know about
Mhm.
things. They have been steering their organizations. They will steer their companies into the future in whatever. So what is that their fear? Is it about, about integrating AI the right way, or is it more about fighting AI because the hype is also there?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of pressure on CEOs and leaders to use AI, and the hype is driving that. So, if you've got a CEO, he may look at it with some skepticism. I'm not sure AI is going to help my business, but he's got his board and his investors, and he's got his customers saying, what are you doing with AI? And so the CEO has to make a decision. We have to do something and recognize the world is changing, right? And AI makes some things possible that weren't possible before. So are you going to go forward with it, even though you don't know enough yet? Or are you going to wait, and potentially the thing they're worried about is letting their competitors get ahead of them, right? So if your competitor figures out how to use AI better than you do, faster than you do, then you're going to be at a disadvantage. So it's in the CEO's best interest to figure out how to use AI. The challenge is what I call AI overwhelm. There's so much information and it's all over the place. There's hype, there's people, there's complete skeptics and doomers. There's all this stuff going on, and the CEO needs to figure out, what do I pay attention to and what do I not pay attention to? And out of all this information, how do I actually put it into practice where I'm not just, happy, yay, we're using AI, but hey, AI is actually helping my business. And so one of the biggest things I deal with, very first thing with CEOs is to say, let's deal with that AI overwhelm, and let me give you some steps you can take so you don't have to try to understand everything. And so, my goal ultimately is to help CEOs figure out what is the next step I should take. Because if you've got 100 or literally thousands of people telling you to do this next and this next and this next, that's fine. They don't understand your business. They don't understand where you are. They don't understand your team. My job is to help you understand what's the next step to take so that you can move forward and not waste your resources chasing something that isn't going to work.
And how do you do that? What is it that you know, but the left and right people of the CEOs who are also tech experts, they do not know? How is it that you get into the picture?
Well, it's not so much about what people know and don't know. In fact, a lot of times when I work with my clients, I tell my clients up front, 80% of what I tell you is not going to be about AI. And when I tell you, you're gonna say, oh yeah, I kind of knew that. It's just it's hard to look at your own business from the outside, especially with all this, with all the noise going on, and actually recognize that you can manage AI with your existing business skills. You don't need to become a tech guru. And this is one of the things that frustrated me the most is, I'm a techie. I started life as a programmer, and I hate prompt engineering. If you've never heard the term, prompt engineering means coming up with the perfect prompt to get exactly the results you want. Well, that is a technical skill. And it's not that I hate doing prompt engineering. It's that I hate that we're telling non-technical people they need to learn this technical skill. And what I found was, I actually got frustrated when I started working with LLMs, when they broke out at the end of 2022, in trying to figure out what's the right way to get the results you want. And what I found was prompt engineering it's all over the place. And one of the problems with prompts is if the model changes, your prompt may not work anymore. So that's not an evergreen solution. It's a technical skill. It's not an evergreen solution. What I found though was when I started working with AI, the same way I work as a manager with humans, I gave it the same information. I gave it the right context. Why are we doing this? I gave it the objective. Here's exactly what I want you to do. I told it what I didn't want to do. I gave it priorities. And then I evaluated the results and made sure that they were correct before I asked it to expand. So you start with something small and grow. And this is exactly what managers learn to do when you're delegating to humans. So those skills, I realized, wow, I had a light bulb. These management skills actually work with AI. And the reason is because, that quote you quoted me at the beginning, right? AI is never human. AI is not human and never will be, but it's the first tool we can treat as if it was human. And that means we can use human language and human management skills to get good results from AI. And it turns out that when you go really deep on that, you realize that that applies to almost everything about how we use AI. If you look at AI security, for example, we already have plenty of practices about how to manage security with human beings. We try to make sure that they're properly authenticated. We limit the tools and the resources that humans have access to. Well, that's what we need to do the same thing with AI. And when you come in and you say, I'm going to let AI do everything, which human would you hire that you're going to let do everything and touch everything in your company? There's not many, right? So why would we bring in AI to do the same thing? So a lot of what I do with leaders is to help reframe and say, okay, if you were to hire a human, this is a really simple thing and it works really well. If you were to hire a human to do exactly what you're going to ask AI to do right now, what information would you give them? What limitations would you give them? Where would you allow them access to and not? And when people start doing that, all of a sudden they start getting good results and the risk starts to go down pretty dramatically.
Absolutely. So these leaders, as I earlier mentioned, also smart people, and you
Yes.
also talk about AI misconceptions. What It's almost ironical. Why should they have misconceptions about AI? Something you mentioned, but I want to understand it better. Common misconception leaders have about AI implementation means they don't have to worry about too many things. They only have to worry about, isn't it, whether this is the right final step that they are taking because things are evolving so fast.
Yeah, so the biggest misconception that I see is leaders that try to lead AI and they come up with huge strategy, but they don't use it much or even at all themselves. And that's not going to work. And the reason that's not going to work is because instead of understanding what AI can and can't do, the only way you can decide what to do for strategy or which projects to take on is you have to listen to somebody else. Well, as a CEO, it's your job to understand the strategy. And that means you have to understand what AI is capable of and what it's not. So that's the biggest misconception. And this is also a delegation mistake that leaders make is they say, okay, I'm going to give this to my COO or my CIO or my CTO, and I'm going to let them manage it. But there's a difference between AI. AI is a business transformation. It's not just a technology, right? It's going to affect every industry, every role, every function, right? Every job. And you can't delegate that and you can't be listening to somebody else tell you what to do with that if you're the CEO, because that ultimately that affects your entire business. So as a CEO, as a top leader, as somebody who leads a function, it's ultimately on you to understand how AI is going to work for your business and for your function. Now, we went through the same thing with the internet, right? The transition from from paper to PCs and or desktop terminals, and from desktop terminals or PCs to the internet, those were big changes, and we saw a similar churn where people were trying to figure out, how do I use this thing? I don't know if you're old enough, AJ, to have gone through the internet transition. I am.
Yes,
And there
yes.
was a lot of talk about, hey, it's the new economy. Okay, well, it turned out it wasn't a new economy. It was a new way of acquiring customers. It was a new way of marketing or advertising, right? So there's certain things that people had to figure out the internet was good for and was not good for. And we're in that same stage with AI. And AI, one of the differences is that AI is changing fast, right? AI is gaining new capabilities fast, whereas the internet was kind of, once the internet was out there, it didn't change that much, although people came up with new ways to use it. AI is changing under our feet as we're figuring out how to use it. And so that's one of the things that challenges it. Now, I got to talking there, and um, I want you to ask your question again so I can make sure that I answer it directly.
Right. In terms of, you see, you speak two things. One is
Hmm.
that you don't need to be a tech guru in this to
Hmm.
understand these things. Secondly, your management skills are themselves enough to understand the AI part of things. Help us understand this part. Why is it that they are not able to understand their existing strength and looking at it as AI from beyond their existing strength, where it becomes a problem for them to understand?
Yeah. So one of the reasons there's two things that contribute to this really strongly. One is there's a lot of hype, and this is driven. I'm not going to pull any punches here. This is driven by the AI vendors themselves telling people AI is going to be artificial general intelligence. They say it's Sam Altman actually said it's a magic box in the sky. I mean, they use this language that's not designed to help you in your business. Actually, it's designed to help their business. And I think CEOs are aware that this happens, but when it becomes such a flood, it becomes hard to figure out, is that hype or is it reality? And when your competitors, some of whom are not completely honest, are saying, hey, we're doing great things with AI, then CEOs start to feel pressure. Well, I got to figure this out. I got to do something, right? And that idea of saying I need to do something rather than saying, let's step back and make sure we do the right thing, that's not wrong, but it pushes people to make decisions that they otherwise wouldn't make if they took a little bit more time. And so that hype and what other people are saying about AI and how to use AI, most people who are saying, hey, you need to use AI, are talking about technical skills. That's their focus. They say you need to learn how to prompt and do prompt engineering. You need to learn these tools. Well, what I do is I say, step back for a minute. Why do you need to learn that tool, right? Why do you need to use these 10 different AI tools? You've got a marketing department. Why are you trying to come up with marketing materials? You need to understand the capabilities there, but why are you trying to learn that specific skill yourself? Step back and look at it from a management perspective again. And what I work on very clearly with CEOs is understanding there's certain things that you cannot delegate with AI. The strategy itself, you cannot delegate. That's your job, right? As the CEO, as the president, it's your job to understand that strategy and to be able to implement it. But there are certain things that you absolutely should delegate. One of the things I talk about is there's a distinction between AI as amplification, where you're saying, hey, you got a human being and we're going to use AI to help them get stuff done, get more stuff done, and particularly to take over the boring, tedious, and the difficult jobs that everybody has, these tasks that they need to do, that humans aren't necessarily very good at. Deep research, deep analysis of data. This is stuff that AI is great at, but humans aren't as great. We can get AI to help with that. That's amplification. The other side is automation. And a lot of times, one of the things you'll hear is people will talk about these without saying what they're talking about. Are they talking about me using it as a chatbot and helping with my job? Or are they talking about automating a workflow? And once you actually see that distinction, as a CEO, you don't need to worry about the automation. You need to worry about what's capable to be automated. But why are you trying to learn how to automate if you're the CEO? You should be working with your IT department and your technical people to do the automation, and you should focus on how you can use that human amplification side to get actually more value for your employees and get more efficiency in your organization.
Absolutely. You talk about the 6 stages of AI transformation, and
Yes.
leaders can actually figure out where they are, and they can avoid the
Yes.
roadblock and can get on to the stage that they are actually in. Help us understand from these 6 stages of transformation, how would they know or anyone know what stage they are in?
Okay, so there's 6 stages. The first stage is awareness. That means you know AI exists and you know it may help your business, but you're not yet sure how. The second stage is experimentation. And this is where you say, we don't know how AI is going to work, so let's figure it out. Let's start doing some pilot projects. Let's get some people in our organization to learn where AI can work and where it may help us. The third stage is adoption. And this is what a lot of organizations focus on. And that's where you're moving from experiments into actually having those pilots something that people use day to day, right? So you tried something out, you said, hey, this seems to work great. Now you're going to integrate that into a process so that people are using it every day. That's adoption. The next stage is value. And this is one that a lot of leaders, they may get to the point where they have adoption. They're like, okay, everybody's using AI. This is where they start asking the question, they're using AI, but is it actually helping any? Are we actually getting things done faster? Are we actually, is it actually affecting the bottom line? Because if it's not, why are we spending so much time and energy on this? Why did we change this process that's been working for 3, 4, 6 years with something that now people are uncomfortable with, but it's not actually helping, right? The fifth stage is transformation. So once you've figured out how to get value from AI, now you know what you need to know to start integrating it across your organization. And then the sixth stage is where AI is just the way things are. And this is where AI isn't special anymore, and AI isn't something that people are talking about. It's just the way business is done in your organization. And right now, I will tell you, I know of nobody in stage 6. I know nobody where AI is just, it's not special anymore. But I know that we'll get there because, again, like I said, I went through the transition to the internet. And the internet, there were, at the beginning of the internet adoption, there were chief internet officers. There were people talking every day about how excited they were to use the internet. You don't hear it. When was the last time you saw a chief internet officer? When was the last time you saw somebody get excited? Oh, I use the internet today. You don't, because it's just part of how business is done. The internet is. And so AI is going to get there. And once it gets there, then that's where ultimately leaders really want to get, where AI is a really important tool that can do some very valuable things for your organization, but where you're not trying to figure out what it is. And so when you know those 6 stages, you can figure out where you are. And in fact, people often think they're in a further stage than they are, and I have some steps that actually help you figure that out, right? There's some gates you have to pass through. But the other thing that I wanted to say about this is the CEO can look at your organization and say, there are these 6 stages, where are we? But also each function can say, where is my function? Because one of the challenges CEOs have is that different functions and even different teams within different functions are at different levels with AI. So how do you figure that out? These 6 stages help you figure out which teams are really far along. There may be some teams in your organization that are in the transformation stage already. They're starting to integrate AI a lot of places, and there may be others that haven't moved past awareness yet. So this is a tool that helps you diagnose in your organization where your organization is and where the different parts of it are, so that you can target your resources and your training effectively to get everybody moving forward.
Absolutely, absolutely, John. So let's learn a bit from your book, Lead AI with Confidence. Tell us a bit about your book. Means in this fast-changing world, how do you think leaders will be able to learn from this tomorrow or day after tomorrow? This will also, become thing of yesterday. How have you written this book in a way that it still has some shelf life?
That's a fantastic question. And the reality is I may eventually rewrite the book and call it, Lead Transformation with Confidence, because although there's some AI specific things in the book, the majority of the book is talking about a path to technology transformation within a business, so business transformation. And so it's talking about those 6 stages of AI transformation actually aren't just for AI. They're actually 6 stages of business transformation, because at some point, AI is going to become just the way things are, and we're going to have some new technology that upends the apple cart. Right? Those 6 stages will still apply. You still need to know the technology exists. You're still going to have to experiment with it. You're still going to have to adopt it, right? All those stages apply. And the majority of the book is written with that in mind. It's not just, hey, here's what you do with AI. It's here's the best practices for you to lead transformation. And right now, AI is the poster child for this. But when AI becomes the way things are, and the next thing is what? Maybe it's humanoid robotics. I don't know what it is. You don't know what it is. Nobody knows what it is. When that happens, most of these frameworks will still work. And one of the reasons they'll still work is because they're based on how us humans work, not focusing on the technology, but focusing on the fact that you're always going to have people and you're always going to be serving customers who are people. So you need to keep the human in mind, and the process that you go through it's a human process for dealing with technology.
Absolutely. And someone who knows about AI, someone who is a fractional chief AI officer, how do you determine who is your ideal client?
My ideal client is a CEO. And there's a specific reason I work with CEOs and not with others most often. Although I do work with CTOs or CIOs, but typically I'm working with the CEO because ultimately it's their job to figure out the strategy. And if you've got a CTO who wants to implement something and the CEO is not on board, that's going to be hard to do, because again, the CEO should be the one driving AI strategy, not the CTO, because strategy is the CEO's role. And I focus specifically on businesses between 5 and 50 million in revenues. And my sweet spot is non-technical CEOs running technical organizations. And the reason that's my sweet spot is because that's been my career, has been working with non-technical CEOs as the technical role, as the person running the technical organizations, and translating the technical into the strategic and the practical applications for the organization. Does that answer your question, or did you have something else in mind?
No, no, no. Perfect, perfect. I just wanted to understand if somewhere where someone were to listen to this conversation and were also, a potential client, how would they know what you would be, you would be the right fit or they would be right fit for you? From that perspective, there is so much to learn about all this from you, John, and I'm sure a lot of leaders, a lot of companies, a lot of people
Thank you.
would want to connect with you, learn more about what you are doing, how the future looks like, and how they can be better prepared as even as small businesses as well as bigger ones. What's the best way for them to do so?
The best way is to go to my website and just book a call with me. It's free. And that's where I would say, hey, let's talk about what you want, right? Let's talk about why you're interested in AI. And I may tell you on that call that you don't have an AI problem, you have a different business problem. For example, I had one client who came to me and said, I need to use AI in my business. My product is behind, right? We need to ship. And I said, okay, that's great. And then when we went through it all, I said, you don't have an AI problem, you have a product management problem. And I said, my main advice to you is go and get that figured out. Go talk to the product manager, figure out what your schedule is. If you don't understand why you're late, you need to understand that. And then once you understand that, we can answer the question whether AI can help with that. So he did that. He worked that out and he came back to me. And yes, we used AI to help with that and to help the development team turn out the product and get the results out faster. But it wasn't actually an AI problem. It was a product management problem. So book a call with me. I'll talk with you about what you're looking to AI to do. And I'm going to ask you a really simple question. It's going to be, what problem are you trying to solve? Because one of the biggest failures with AI is when people go, it's shiny object syndrome. People try to use AI without figuring out which problem they're trying to solve. And if you don't know what problem you're trying to solve, how can you possibly have AI help you solve it? Right? So book a call with me. Go to my website. It's johnmichaelthomas.ai. Simple. Or reach out to me and connect on LinkedIn as well. It's my LinkedIn profile is /IN/John Michael Thomas.
Wonderful. With this, it's a wrap on this very special edition of the KJ Masterclass Live. Thank you so much indeed for joining us.
Thank you so much, Adrian.